All right, let's dive right in. We're looking at a situation that is balanced on a knife's edge. It's day 47 of the conflict between the US and Iran, and there's a ceasefire, but it is incredibly fragile. Tensions are sky high, troops are moving, and other parts of the region are still very much at war. So let's break down what's really going on.
And right off the bat, you can just feel the international pressure. I mean, this is a pretty sharp comment from the British Chancellor, a major U.S. ally. It just goes to show you how controversial this whole thing has been from the very start. The stakes could not be higher for everyone involved.
And this right here is the core of it all. After more than 6 weeks of fighting, the guns have gone silent, for now. But you can tell this peace is brittle, and you better believe every single move is being watched very, very closely.
So, with all that tension hanging in the air, what's happening behind the scenes? Well, even with the ceasefire in place, there is a massive diplomatic effort going on right now, trying to find some kind of path out of this mess.
You know, what's really interesting here is the totally different vibes we're getting. On one hand, the White House is projecting a ton of confidence, right? Using words like good and productive, they sound really optimistic. But then you look at Iran, and it's a much more cautious tone. They confirm they're exchanging messages through Pakistan, but their language is all business, all about discussing opposing positions. That difference alone shows you just how delicate these talks really are.
So while the diplomats are talking, there's another strategy playing out in parallel. The U.S. is applying what's basically a 1-2 punch, using its military might and its economic power to try and force Iran's hand. Let's look at the military side first. First, you've got a major military buildup. There are 6,000 additional troops heading to the region with an aircraft carrier group.
And they're not the only ones. Another 4,200 are set to get there before the month is over.
And once they all arrive, they'll be joining the forces already there, bringing the total number of U.S. personnel in the region to over 50,000. That is a massive military footprint, and it's designed to send a very clear message.
Now, alongside that military pressure, you've got something called Operation Economic Fury. This has two main parts. First, a naval blockade trying to choke off Iran's shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, which is absolutely critical for them. And second, secondary sanctions. That means the U.S. will go after any other country or bank that even tries to do business with Iran. The goal here is pretty clear: isolate Iran's economy completely.
But, of course, a huge question mark is hanging over this whole strategy, especially the naval blockade. Is it actually working? Well, the evidence is, let's just say it's complicated.
To even try and answer that, we've got to look at some pretty conflicting reports.
So check this out. On one side, you have U.S. Central Command. They're claiming it's a total success, saying no ships have gotten through and they've even turned 6 around. But then you have independent analysis from BBC Verify, which uses ship tracking data, and it tells a totally different story. They've tracked multiple vessels with ties to Iran either leaving port or crossing the strait since the blockade was put in place.
Now, and this is really important, you have to take that tracking data with a grain of salt. It's not foolproof. Ships can just switch off their transponders and pretty much go dark to avoid being seen. So what that means is the true picture of the blockade's effectiveness is incredibly fuzzy, and we're left with two very different official stories.
In this ceasefire, it doesn't exist in a bubble. While the U.S. and Iran are holding their fire, the wider regional conflict is actually heating up. So let's shift our focus north, to the border between Israel and Lebanon, because the fighting there is really escalating.
This right here shows you the weird paradox we're in. The main players, the US and Iran, are in a ceasefire, but at the exact same time, Iran's most powerful ally in the region, Hezbollah, is stepping up its fight with one of America's closest allies, Israel. It just shows you how interconnected and volatile this whole situation is. And look, this is intense. We're not talking about a minor skirmish. In just a single day, you've got reports of over 30 rockets being fired by Hezbollah into Israel, while Israeli strikes reportedly killed at least 9 people in Lebanon. This is a hot war, plain and simple.
So finally, let's bring this all back to what really matters. The undeniable impact this conflict has on the people who have to live through it, and on the political leaders who have to make these impossible decisions.
This quote from an aid worker on the ground in Tehran is it's a harrowing reminder of the real human cost. For millions of people in Iran, life isn't even close to normal. Even with a ceasefire, they're dealing with destroyed homes, a crippled economy, and this constant fear that the fighting could start again at any second.
And there's the political cost. In Israel, public opinion is really complicated right now.
People there generally support the ongoing fight against Hezbollah on their northern border, but they are against the ceasefire with Iran because they feel like the big goals of the war, like getting rid of Iran's missile program or its nuclear ambitions, haven't been met, and that puts a ton of pressure on Israel's leadership.
So that's where all this leaves us. You've got these fragile talks happening under the shadow of a huge military buildup. You've got an economic blockade that may or may not be working, and you've got a violent proxy war flaring up right next door. The ceasefire clock is ticking down, and the entire region is just holding its breath, asking the exact same question. What happens next?